Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Red Hoop Talk. I am Shannon O'Loughlin, and I'm a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and the executive director and attorney for the Association on American Indian Affairs. I am coming to you from the original lands of the Piscataway peoples who are state recognized. Some of the bands are state recognized here in Maryland, but not yet federally recognized. Really happy to be with you today. We're doing the show just a little bit differently. I think you will see next to me is our guest, Christine Diindiisi McCleave. Hey, Christine. She is an enrolled citizen at Turtle Mountain and is the executive director of the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition. She has been working on boarding school issues and she had I'm losing my place here in her very long bio and education experience, let me tell you. And that's one thing I've always loved about Christine is that she is brilliant and she's humble. And so you would never know how smart this lady is until you really start talking to her, which I hope we get a really good chance to do tonight. She's done research in her Master's of Arts in Leadership that is based on the spectrum of spiritual practices between traditional Native American spirituality and Christianity. Her research has examined the legacy of Indian boarding schools on spiritual activities today, the historical trauma it's caused, Indigenous rights, and Indian activism. I'm really grateful to introduce our guest, Christine, who's here with us. Okay, Christine, now you can talk.
Bonjour, Shannon. Dinaway Magani Duke, Diindiisi Indigenous Makinak Waju and Dunjiba Magizi and Dudame. Greetings, my relatives. My name is Christine Diindiisi McCleave. Diindiisi means blue jay in my Ojibwe language. And I am from Turtle Mountain and I'm an Eagle Clan. I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and these are traditionally homelands. We share these homelands with the Dakota. So Ojibwe and Dakota both used these lands for time immemorial as our own, and we're still here.
We're all still here and extremely grateful, especially right now that we can take this time and be together and talk. So Christine, you and I earlier this week kind of sat and decided how we were going to do the show. As you all know, my regular co-host, Roy Melendez, has been having some issues with his job and hasn't been able to be with us consistently on Sunday. And so Christine and I were talking, you know, what would we like to do? Is there a co-host you'd like to be on the show with you? And we decided, you know what? This is just going to be an all girls night. We're going to sit and chat about some interesting things going on in Indian country and with the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition. And then we might get into some personal stuff. I don't know. We'll see. But I want to welcome everyone who's coming in and joining us on our chat. Please chime in. Tell us who you are. Tell us where you're coming from. And please be sure to ask any questions. And I'm just going to get Christine started off. Christine,
Yeah.
Where did you come from? And how did you get to do the stuff that you're getting to do with boarding schools today?
Well, that's a story in and of itself, for sure. So I liked what you said in the intro. And so I want to speak to a couple of things about that. Yeah, I really do try to fly under the radar. So I thought it was funny that you kind of called me out on that. Like, you would never know. And I'm like, yeah, don't tell them. You know, and I think part of that has to do with, you know, my upbringing and how I was raised. And not that I was raised like with all these like traditional values, right? At least not, it wasn't spoken that way. I'm sure that they've been passed down, but I wasn't even aware, right, that to be humble is one of our values like that. So it more stems just from from humble beginnings, like literally being humbled by life's circumstances. And I think also just the experience that I've had, I'm one of those people who never got recognized as like 40 under 40, right? Like I'm the person who, you see the memes nowadays. It's like, tell me about the person who got their PhD when they're 60, right? Like I'm a late bloomer. So, so in that respect, I've never been like out front, right? I actually struggled in my teenage years and what would be college years. I got a full ride to college because I was smart and hardworking, and I knew the only way I could afford to go to college was through scholarships. But then I blew it because guess what? Historical trauma. I had a bunch of issues that just kind of took over my life. And so I didn't get my bachelor's degree till I was 30. And I worked full time and went to school in the evenings. And it took me 7 years to complete it, a lot of stopping and starting. And so, it wasn't that typical path that people think you're supposed to take, but it was my path. It was the path I needed to take. Right. And then I was working during that time that I was working and going to school. I was at a corporate HR firm, Aon. At the time it was Hewitt Associates, and then they got purchased and now they're Aon Hewitt. And, corporate reality started to be very disillusioning, in that I was like, you know what, I'm working for someone else's bottom line. Another day, another dollar. I'm not really, getting ahead, and I don't feel satisfied by this work. I'm not doing anything to contribute to society. I'm literally contributing to shareholders, pocketbooks. And so it was around that time that I decided, I really want to do work in the nonprofit industry, and I want to specifically work with our Native communities. I felt like I had a lot of life experience to share with other people. And so I ended up taking a leap of faith. I left my corporate job where I was in management, and I went to work at Indian Land Tenure Foundation as a summer intern.
Right. They've been around for a little while now. Do you remember how long when they were founded?
Yeah, I started there in 2013, maybe, 2013. And I think they had just finished their 10-year anniversary. Actually, I think they started in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're fairly recent. And the purpose of Indian Land Tenure Foundation was really to try to buy back and find ways to return lands, right? But they do a lot more other programming as well.
Yeah, it's more than, and the word tenure means ownership, but it's kind of one of those words in their name that like people don't necessarily understand. But so it literally means ownership. And so, yes, it's not only reclaiming some of the lands that we lost during like the Dawes Act, but, that was literally, stolen around that time. But it's also, they have programs around helping tribes and Indian landowners today, like manage their lands, make money, use them wisely, do environmental programs on their lands, like having buffalo instead of cattle, right? Not only can you make money off the buffalo and they're indigenous and we have a relationship with them, but they're better for your land. They're better for carbon sequestration and things like that. So they have several programs, including they started a spin-off Indian Land Capital company that does loans for land. So it's quite a big mission, just like at the Boarding School Healing Coalition. It's large, right? And so I don't know if I think theirs is like 100-year mission, right? And even that is a little daunting to say we're going to get back the 2/3 of the land base that we lost after all the original treaties were made. like
scary for people that aren't native.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there is that new hashtag that's trending, land back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And people are literally buying that land back, right? Versus where I think like the land back hashtag is like, give it back. Right. You're not upholding your end of the treaty, so just call it null and void and give us the land back. But no, actually, they help. Indian Land Tenure Foundation would help people put land that they had purchased into trust. So like a tribe would purchase land and then apply to put it in trust. So it was part of the reservation lands.
Yeah, they also have, I don't know if they've updated it, but they created some really good curriculum for grade school to high school that I found really impressive and often use as kind of a resource when I'm educating public schools about what resources are out there. So what were you doing at Indian Land Tenure? Everything.
I worked on Lessons of Our Land. There's their website for those lessons, that curriculum that they created. And so it's lessonsofourland.org. And when I started, I was the research intern for the summer. And really, I was doing it just to get experience, and the fact that experience in the nonprofit sector and the fact that it was a Native nonprofit was just like thrilling for me. And on the first day, they're walking me around the office and there's an empty desk. And they're like, oh, that's where our communication officer used to sit. And I said, oh, my gosh. I said, I have a communication degree. And they're like, yeah, we know. Like, that's why we hired you. So essentially, it was a trial run with me as an intern. And then they hired me as the communication officer. So that's what I did when I was there.
Wow. So how did you jump from there? So did you jump from there to NABS?
Yeah, that's a really exciting story. So, and I love how you're jumping in, right? Because I would have just kept telling you the whole story. So feel free to jump in.
Well, you can. Don't let me stop you. If there's some juicy stuff in there, go for it.
I wanted to plug the website for the lessons you mentioned for sure.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot being the communication officer there, and working very closely with program officers, working with development officers, and seeing this national Native nonprofit, actually foundation, and how they were impacting communities around the country and the work that they were doing. I was there for almost 3 years, but prior to actually making that jump from corporate to nonprofit sector, I had gone back to do my master's and had started my research for my thesis, which you mentioned, on Native American spirituality and Christianity. And that was a personal journey. That was literally because my grandfather went to a Catholic boarding school and never talked about it, but really seemed to harbor deep resentment toward the Catholic Church. And so I was actually brought up in the Catholic Church, although we only went, St. Anne's is like the most prominent church on the reservation. There's a couple other denominations, but the majority of people in Turtle Mountain would identify as Catholic if they were going to identify as some kind of Christian religion. And but we just went on occasion, especially on Christmas and Easter. And then at 9, I was baptized. So they didn't baptize me as a baby. They waited and gave me my choice. However, I always criticize that saying, but they didn't expose me to any other religions. It was like this or nothing.
Right, that's all you had. And did you grow up there at Turtle Mountain?
I did for a little bit. We moved around a lot too. But yeah, I lived in Turtle Mountain when I was little. We moved to Minneapolis when I was 9. So I've been here since.
So, and that's when you were baptized.
Right before we moved. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Right. Wow.
I was actually baptized. We were living in Chamberlain, South Dakota, and we had friends in Fort Thompson. So I was actually baptized in Fort Thompson on the Crow Reservation. So
oh, wow.
Crow Creek. So back to Indian Land Tenure Foundation, I had not wrapped up my thesis. Like, I had done the research, I had done the lit review, which talked about boarding schools and really interesting information about some of the first Indian activists in the country, were actually in with the church, representatives of various denominations, because that's where they got an education. That's where they learned to speak English. And that was the audience that they were appealing to help their fellow community, their nations, to, so they were, the first advocates were really asking the church to do right by Native people. So that's interesting that our Indian activism has its roots there, right?
Right.
And so I hadn't finished up the thesis. I literally waited till my credits were about to expire before I had to finalize it and defend the thesis. It was like 70% done. It was just wrapping up, my conclusions and findings. And I started to feel like I wanted to do more. And so I just happened to see this job announcement come across my computer screen one day. And when I read the job posting for this position, which was titled at the time executive officer, so it wasn't chief yet, right? But and I had actually come across the work that was being done when I did my lit review. And so it's kind of weird that when I went back and was citing myself for an article I was writing recently, I reread my lit review, and I mentioned the boarding school healing project, which at the time was not established as its own nonprofit. It was a project that was being funded by the Seventh Generation Fund, and really just grassroots, before NABS actually became a nonprofit that was sponsored by the Native American Rights Fund, and that happened in 2012. So here we are in 2015. NABS is a nonprofit. It's hiring its first staff person. I'm reading the job posting going, oh my gosh, I have a background in HR and management. I have the communication, marketing, and development, like fundraising experience. And I did my thesis, my research on this, right? So I was just like amazed that it seemed like such a perfect fit. And so I applied. And then when I was being flown out to interview in Boulder at the NARF office, I nerded out and I showed up with a proposal. I had a whole proposal book put together, and then we went out to lunch with the president at the time, who was Denise Lashmedier, also from Turtle Mountain, and then the other board members who were there, and some NARF folks, and two other candidates. So it was lunch with everybody.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
oh, wow,
it was really, really interesting. So then I actually sat next to Denise, and waited for her to kind of lean over and talk to me. I didn't want to try to talk her ear off and dominate her time the whole lunch hour. But when we finally started to talk, there were all these like connections, right? So she asked about my Indian name, and I said that my uncle Alex Dakota had given me my name. And she knew Alex. He teaches Ojibwe there at the Turtle Mountain High School. And it turns out that she mentioned a prominent elder who was on our reservation, and he went by Grandpa Cree. And I said, you know what, I've heard of him before. I actually had an artist gift me a painting of an owl, and she had been babysat by Grandma and Grandpa Cree, who gifted her beaded moccasins when she was little. And so she wanted to know what the meaning and significance of the design on them was. And I kind of chuckled and I said, you would have to ask Grandma Cree who beaded them, right? Because unlike, some tribes, I didn't know of any specific meaning in any patterns, right? So I said, whatever she was thinking when she beaded them for you. So she was so thrilled with that answer that she gifted me this painting. And then here Denise was sitting there saying that my uncle had learned to speak Ojibwe from them. And so it was like this really weird, cool, like circle connection. And I think both of us, felt like, wow, that was really significant, how that all kind of came together right there in that moment in time. And so anyways, I got the job, probably not because of that story, but because I showed up with a proposal and had a plan for what I would do, to build up the organization. And they hired me. And then I actually accepted the job. And then I went to yoga that weekend. And at yoga, I became aware that I was overwhelmed with fear. Because I was like, what am I doing? Oh my God, this is a national, historical mission to heal boarding school trauma for all these people. And what am I thinking? I don't think I can do this. And I just started to cry. And then all of a sudden I heard this voice that sounded like my voice in my head, but it wasn't me. And it said, just be the conduit. And I kind of, underneath my sobbing was like, okay, I think I can do that. Right. So it was basically told to me very early on that everything I'm doing here, even though I'm the conduit and I'm the vessel, it's not me. This is very clearly all the work that we've accomplished, everything that we've been able to do is the result of so many people's prayers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it is incredible. And I've felt so lucky to be able to witness and participate in some of it, and know that you are the perfect individual to lead that organization. You have all the things that that organization needs to be successful, and it's happening, right? There's incredible things going on with the organization, and I know it wasn't easy getting started, but do you want to talk about either the conferences or the research? I mean, you all have just the basic history that you all have pulled together that most of us were completely unaware of regarding boarding schools is incredible. And then the things that are going on today, that you and I spoke of earlier this week. I mean, just go at it, Christine. I mean, gloat about the amazing things this organization has been doing.
Well, I don't know if I can call it gloating. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because so basically, I've been the executive for 5 years, starting, in October. And it became clear very early on, although NARF and the board, when they didn't have any staff, had made a lot of headway, it became clear that some kind of outward education campaign was going to be crucial, right? Because anytime and it's still today, 5 years later, it's not much different. Anytime I meet somebody, if they are Native, I can say Boarding School Healing Coalition. They know what Indian boarding schools are. We've all had somebody in our family, somewhere along the line has been impacted, has either gone to boarding school or we've heard these boarding school stories. We all know boarding school happened to our people. People who are not Native, very rarely, like 1 out of 10 might know. And when I meet those people, I'm really surprised. I'm like, wow, where'd you hear about it? And, some of them actually had decent education and heard about it in high school or whatever. And, or they learned about it on their own, but the majority of people just don't know. They have absolutely no idea. So at that time, I have to say the full name of the organization, then I have to explain the history, right? So we knew we needed an education campaign, not only for the general public, but also for our people. Beyond knowing that boarding school happened, there's another level that we were hoping to get to in terms of raising that awareness within ourselves, in our families, in our communities, about how it actually impacted us. So, for example, I mentioned my grandfather, and I talk about this all the time. My great-grandfather actually went to Carlisle, the first off-reservation federal Indian boarding school. But I didn't find that out until I had been working for NABS for 6 months. I was trying to find out the dates that my grandfather had gone to Marty Catholic Indian School, and then he also went to Haskell. At the time, it would have been either the late 40s, early 50s. So at the time, Haskell was still just a vocational school. It wasn't yet junior college, nor had it yet become a university at that point. So I was trying to find out more information so I could find his records. And in asking my mom, she said, ask your uncle. And I asked my uncle. And then he one night texts me this amazing photo of my great grandfather at Carlisle, and he's wearing a football uniform. And it's handwritten on the photo, 1910, and then it says dad. And so he was actually there playing football at the same time as Jim Thorpe.
Mm-hmm.
He played football with Jim Thorpe, and I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me this? Why don't we talk about this, right? So we not only in my family didn't talk about what happened to my grandfather at Catholic boarding school that made him hate the Catholic Church, because when my uncle was getting married at St. Anne's in Belcourt, he almost didn't go to the wedding. He said he didn't want to step foot in the Catholic Church. So what happened? I keep asking relatives, and they said, he would just say he didn't want to talk about it. And one time I was on a talk show, similar to this. And I said, we need to break that silence in order to begin the healing. It may be painful, but, if you had a boarding school experience that was traumatic, it's important for your relatives, your children, your grandchildren to know, so that we can understand, and we can work towards that healing together. And I actually had an elder call in and say, how can you tell me that? I don't want to break their hearts. I don't want to share that. I don't want to make them feel that pain. Mm-hmm. And, I was at a loss at what to tell this elder, kind of, telling me,
right.
So it's difficult. And so that's part of what we're trying to do, is just create those spaces for people to talk and process if they want, if they're ready, right? Encouraging them to do that on their own. In Canada, we also have had the commissioners from Canada give us advice, come and talk to our board, and be involved in our strategic planning. And when we talk to them, and when we learn what happened in Canada, some of our board members went to some of those hearings at the Canadian Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And at those hearings, they allowed people to share their testimony, and they gave them the choice to either be in the room in front of the commissioners with a microphone where, you have a large group of people listening, or you could go into a smaller private room and give your testimony one-on-one. You could choose to have it recorded or not recorded. You could choose to give it anonymously. They really tried to do everything to accommodate the various ways that people wanted to share. And then they had counselors, healers, traditional people walking around with smudge, people walking around with tissues, both, handing you a tissue and collecting your tissues. And then they burn the tissues in ceremony. And they just did everything to try and take care of people. And we realized early on that we can't just willy-nilly go out there trying to collect people's testimonies and stories, because when you open that trauma, when you hold that space and create that container, that's a huge responsibility. And it takes a lot of energy, care, and resources to do it right, especially on a massive scale like they did with those regional hearings in Canada. So there was a lot of obstacles where we were trying to figure out, this is ultimately what we want to do. We need to capture these stories from our elders who are aging and passing on. We wanted the churches and the government to take responsibility, to be held accountable. And NARF looked at, legal ways to make that happen. And that was complicated. There's, the legal system in Canada and the legal system in the United States. The same pathway wouldn't work for us here. To get that kind of class action lawsuit that they had, which resulted in a settlement, which resulted in their commission being formed. Right. So we focused largely on education Back in 2015 and 2016, we were working with the White House Initiative for American Indian Alaska Native Education that was appointed by President Obama at the time. But then when the administration changed, we had to change our tactics as we no longer had that direct line to the president and the executive office of our government. So we focused on just trying to do all these things that a commission would do, but without a commission, right? So finding the records, trying to actually document what happened, both with oral histories, our testimonies from our side of the story, but also those actual boarding school records, which in Canada were court ordered to be brought forward for the commission. And so that's been a huge part of what we're trying to do. And we are actually finding that a lot of the records are missing or spread out across the country.
I'm going to, while you're talking, I'm just going to go to your website and see if I can pull up some of the resources that you all have. If I can find them, if I can remember where it is. And here it is. I'm not sure if we'll be able to see it very well. And you can tell me if there's someplace else in the website to look. Yeah, it's really, really tiny.
It is. But if you go to the website, you can click on that image. It'll bring up a PDF that you can look at. So this is one of those things that is kind of cool to brag about, right? But I just don't like bragging, so I end up spinning it and being like, turning it into a piece of advocacy. So here I go. Okay. So Dr. Denise Lajmadier, who I already mentioned, if you're listening, hi Denise. She started researching this list of boarding schools because the board of directors and NARF realized early on there had never been a comprehensive list compiled. And we talked about doing a FOIA, and we finally did a FOIA in 2016.
And a FOIA is a Freedom of Information Act request.
Yes, thank you.
The government.
I had to say that because I was like, oh yeah, I always got to say what it stands for. So we did that request and sent it to the BIA. And we asked them some really basic questions. We wanted to know the number of boarding schools that had existed in the United States that were federally funded, right? So, limiting it in some respects, but there were a lot of church-run, federally funded boarding schools. We also asked them the number of children who went to those schools and the fate of those children. So, for example, in Canada, from 2010 to 2015, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission found that there were 150 boarding schools in Canada, and they call them residential schools. We have found to date 367. So Dr. Denise was, spending a lot of her time compiling this list. And then at some point we had some other interns and some other staff, chip in and they found more schools. And so the list just keeps actually getting fine-tuned, where we realize a school got renamed. And so it's actually a duplicate on the list. So we fix that, or we find more schools. We're not finding a lot more these days, but every once in a while we find another one. Or somebody looks at the list and go, hey, my boarding school that I went to isn't on here. So 150 schools in Canada, 367 that we found so far in the US. The TRC in Canada said 100,000 children went to those boarding schools. Here in the United States, we do not know how many children went to these 367 schools. Mm-hmm. In Canada, they found that approximately 6,000 died or went missing. And here in the United States, again, we do not know. So after the FOIA request and not getting a sufficient response from the BIA, because basically they said also, well, we don't know, and then their response was really, we don't do research, right? Because this would have to be researched in order to answer your question.
Right.
And so what we did was we started to work on a filing to this particular group within the United Nations Human Rights Council, and it's called the Working Group on Enforced and Involuntary Disappearances. And their mandate allows for them to investigate any disappeared persons whose whereabouts are still unknown. And so because we actually found cases where a child had gone missing at an Indian boarding school, so literally taken into federal or government custody,
Right.
and then went missing, we qualified to submit a filing to this working group. And so we did that. We submitted our filing in 2019. It took a few years to pull together. We went to NCAI multiple times and tried to get the word out amongst tribes. They did pass a resolution. They passed several resolutions in support of our work, but one in specific that was a call for testimony. And you can read the filing on our website there. It's listed under advocacy. And to date, the United States has not responded to our allegations. So we're still waiting for things to move forward with that investigation.
Do they have to respond in any particular time frame?
Yes and no. They are given 60 days to respond before the UN can take separate measures to launch their investigation. So if you scroll back up to the top there, that image at the very top is, so prior to going to the UN for this filing, I had gone with, and the UN in Switzerland, in Geneva, Switzerland.
Right.
I had gone to the UN offices in New York, and so that's this picture. I went and I read a statement at the Permanent Forum for, what is it again? The Permanent Forum on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples?
Yes. Yes, I think so. There's so many words and yeah.
So I went to that and I read a statement, and so I had been there that morning, and I needed to go back to my hotel room, and so I was on my way back, and I had stopped and had lunch, and I left my credit card. So I was like a few blocks down the road and realized I left it. So I ran back, and then I was running back to the UN, knowing that I was like going to miss my window. And so it's literally like I'm running down the streets of New York, and then I see the flags lined up, and I literally stop because I'm like, I need a picture for social media. At the time, I didn't have the wonderful Vance Black Fox, who was on your show last week, running the communications. It was just me. So I stopped to take this photo. And then I got in there, and there was a window from 3 to 6 in which statements could be read. And I was on the list, and they were going down the list, but they actually didn't finish the list from the prior session. So they started adding people in, and I just kept getting bumped down further and further down the list. It is literally like, 10 minutes before 6 o'clock when they're going to cut it off, and I still haven't been called to read my statement. And I just start to pray. And I said, okay, I'm here. I came all this way. I am ready to read and tell everybody in the world, what happened to you. You got to make it happen, right? And I was the second to last person to read. They called my name. And so when I came back after that really powerful experience, I told our graphic designer, I said, take this photo, and I want you to put that sea of children from Carlisle up in the sky in the background. So she overlaid them for us. And because I really felt like they were there. Otherwise, it wasn't going to happen, because they started going out of order on the list of people who were going to read. And I just, I wouldn't have made it had they gone in order.
That's a wonderful image. That's so powerful. And the work that you're doing there is so powerful. And I see that Denise, is this your friend, Denise?
Yes. 20 more schools. Oh my goodness.
So we're up to 377 then? Is that what that means?
Yeah, we'll have to confer with Denise. So we have, like I said, an intern who's still going through the list, and what she's doing with. So Denise, I'm so glad you're listening, Denise. So Denise shared with us all her background research, right? Like all her notes and original research that she had done to compile the bulk of this list. And now we have an intern who spent the last 2 summers going through that list, and she is actually looking to see other information, right? So what we want to do is build a digital map. If you go to the website for the Truth and Reconciliation Center in Canada. So after the commission, it is now the Truth and Reconciliation Center that is carrying on the work. They have all the records. And they have created a digital map where you can click on any of those residential schools and get like a little synopsis of the school. And so that's what we're hoping to do, because we know a few, stories of like, for example, in Carlisle, some of the children are starting to be repatriated from the cemetery at what is now the Army War College. There's also the wonderful story of the Mount Pleasant Indian boarding school, where the state of Michigan sold the buildings to the Saginaw Chippewa tribe for $1. There's the Chamawa boarding school that is actually still open and still boards children. It's the second oldest federal off-reservation Indian boarding school in the country. Carlisle was open first and Chamawa was open next. Where there's also a cemetery, right? So we want to be able to have this digital map where you can click on it, you can see information like, is the school still open? Are the buildings still standing? Is there a cemetery? And, or has it been turned into a cultural center? Like, for example, the Albuquerque Indian School was given over to the Pueblos, I think in the 70s. And I can't remember exactly when they did, but at some point they turned it into, they either raised the building or they turned it into what is now their All Pueblo Cultural Center.
Right.
So, there's wonderful stories like that. And then there's other stories where the community and the boarding school survivors decided they wanted to destroy the building, as part of their healing. They didn't want the building anymore. They didn't want that reminder. And so we want to be able to share some of those stories, or tell people, if there's a cemetery there, and what the current state of the boarding school might be. So we're still going through the list. And as you see, Dr. Lajmidir is still also researching. So, we're continuing to try and share that information with the public and with survivors and descendants.
Do you mind, Christine, if we go back a little bit? Because I want to make sure that everyone who's listening really understands. I think everyone who's in Indian country knows there were boarding schools. My great-grandmother was in a boarding school. My grandmother suffered my great-grandmother's wrath because of that boarding school experience that's been passed down. And I think we all have stories, but I don't know that we all understand why. And we don't understand kind of the legal infrastructure that was at play that made boarding schools what they were and why. I mean, I know that the first boarding school actually was here in Maryland. And I'm forgetting the gentleman. I want to say the last name is Moore. But there was a Episcopal or some other type of boarding school here in Maryland in the 1600s. But as far as federal Indian policy goes, in the 1800s, you had the civilization regulations, right? That basically punished families if they didn't send their kids to school, if they didn't allow those kids to go to school, so that the federal government could educate those children and assimilate them into this very different type of thinking, a militaristic, individual-based, westernized education. And I don't know if you want to talk more about that. You're much more eloquent in it than I am.
There's so much history. Yeah. There's a lot of details that we could really dive into. And I know you have a great legal mind, but that's not my background. So I am aware, studying things as a historian and as a generational survivor, but literally there are so many facets and pieces to this history that I don't know them all, right? So sometimes people will come up to us like at the conference and they'll start talking about something. And, if there's 367 boarding schools and there's 570 some tribes, and guess what? I don't have every one of them memorized, right? So, but yes, what you are saying is true, that at some point, and so that's where I'm like, I can't pinpoint for you the exact law, but at some point it was written that rations could be withheld and parents could be incarcerated. And we do have a historical photo of a group of Apache prisoners, and they were being held at Alcatraz, and their crime was not letting their children go to boarding school. There's so many atrocities that happened like that, and including the fact that our children, when they were there, were mainly being taught to be laborers, farmers, and domestic servants. And then if they reached a certain age and they were able to work on somebody's farm or in somebody's home for the summer as a domestic servant, they were actually farmed out. Carlisle called it their outing program, and other schools did the same. I remember talking to a student who had gone to the Phoenix Indian School, and she remembers working at some house for the summer and earning a very small wage, and often these wages went directly to the school, and then the school would give the student a portion of them. I was able to find through my great-grandfather's records at Carlisle that there was a dispute, and it was later found that Carlisle was not giving the students the amount of wages even that they were supposed to, right? So, and in some cases, these students were not only being farmed out as labor, but they were actually being used as labor at the school. So they built some of the buildings down there in Carson, Nevada, at the, not Sherman. What's the other one?
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about, but I can't think of the name either. I'll look it up.
Yeah. So Stewart
Yeah,
they have a museum, and they've got all these beautiful buildings on their campus. And these buildings were built with all these stones, and they're beautiful, and they're colorful. And in fact, professor of geology went to these buildings and created this like scavenger hunt for his students, because you could literally find all these different rocks in these buildings. And the story that I was told when I visited the folks who just recently opened the Stewart Museum there is that the superintendent gave some students his pickup truck and said, go drive around and pick up rocks. And literally they went and found every single rock they found, and they placed, and they built these buildings. So they built the buildings, they grew the food, they sewed the uniforms. And in some cases, as you'll see if you read Dr. Lashmadere's book, Stringing Rosaries, and the testimonies that she collected there, in some cases, they also would build the coffins for students if they died. So all of this to say that eventually those outing programs, so that's basically like human trafficking, using the students for labor, slave labor. And then also children were given out to some of these homes and abused, sexually abused. So you could also call it, sex trafficking. In either case, it's human trafficking. Mm-hmm. And that experiment of placing these students, these young adults, directly in these white homes, they realized that they assimilated faster and that it was cheaper if you didn't have to run this big, expensive boarding school. And so that is what led to the Bureau of Indian Affairs Indian Adoption Project, where they literally placed ads in the newspapers and said that our children come in all hues and colors. And we were like these commodities, inanimate objects to be sold off.
Right.
And that is why today we have all these issues with our children being represented in the foster care system at higher rates per capita than other ethnicities, because the system was built that way.
Right.
The first Indian child welfare policy of this country was to remove our children and send them to boarding school. That was their first Indian child welfare policy.
Yeah.
So
and even bigger than that, it was an assimilation and land grab policy, because if you could take away that young generation, remove them from their community, their culture, their language, their religion, their beliefs, absolutely remove them, then you could take away that, I guess, community living, that and create people who wanted that individual land ownership, who were those yeoman farmers that was building the West, and take care of the Indian problem.
Yes. Yeah. Colonel Pratt wrote a book called The Red Man's Moses, and he really thought that he was, killing the man, or killing the Indian, but saving the man. He really thought it was like the Christian way to go, because prior, the United States policy was just to war. There was all these Indian wars going on at the end of the 19th century. The Civil War was happening. There was the campaign to kill buffalo, and that's around the time when we had Grant's peace policy. And he said, no more treaties. We're in a time of peace, which was like, what a joke, We're in a time of peace, no more treaties, because we're already at peace. We don't need any more peace treaties. And that was what led the way. There was prior to that, in 1819, the Indian Civilization Fund was created. Mm-hmm. And that was where the Indian agents would use the fund to deliver rations and education and healthcare and all the things that were promised in the treaties in exchange for the land that was ceded. So at the point that they said, okay, this is where the funds come from, and they called it the Indian Civilization Fund. And then at a certain point within Grant's peace policy, it allowed for churches to access these funds. And so that's what opened the way for church-run, federally funded boarding schools. And but when you think about the moment in history where Carlisle became an Indian boarding school, mm-hmm. was right after the Civil War, and like I said, where they were killing buffalo, and everything was the motto of the day was, the only good Indian is a dead Indian, right? So really a turning point in their strategy around how to deal with the quote Indian problem was to assimilate us and steal our children, and quite an insidious strategy, one that was applauded later by Adolf Hitler, yes. One that was modeled around the world in other countries like Canada, Australia, New Zealand. So I think earlier we were talking about like what's the impacts, right? Mm-hmm. And it's going to be different for each family, for each individual. And that's why we need to know our stories. We need to know from our family members. So many people were disconnected and lost. We have a board member, our dear elder, Sandy Whitehawk, who does work with returning adoptees to their families and communities. And really, whether you were adopted out or went to boarding school, the impact was similar. You were being disconnected from your family, from your culture, your language, the land. You were removed. You were taken away and cut off. And there's a great loss and a great grieving that comes with that. And then the pathway that she's been working with people on for healing is to return and restore all of that, right? So it's very similar. We need to be able to return to our relatives and their stories and those histories and know who we are and where we come from. And that really, that goes along with our values at the core from the beginning, whether it's boarding school or not. You're supposed to know who you are and where you come from. And that's one of the things they took away.
Right. And Sandy was a guest a few weeks ago as well, if anyone's interested in listening to her story. So how do this work I mean, I've been to, have you had 2 conferences or 3 conferences now? 2 conferences? 2?
We would have had a third, but COVID, so.
Yeah, COVID screwed that up. And I've been to both of those, and both times it's hard not to reconnect with parts of yourself that are part of your DNA. It's hard not to connect with your heart and everyone else who's in the room there, people who have admittedly been abused, those who are still holding on to their pain, and those who are attempting to let it go, as well as their family members. You all have counselors and others that are there to help during those conferences. There's such a powerful experience, and I wonder what you do to, I mean, the facts and the information that you all are researching and putting together, and the stories that you're learning probably on a weekly basis, I'm sure, are more than heartbreaking. How do you, stay close to who you are and kind of protect yourself so you can keep doing this work for all of us?
Me personally, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because as we've been able to grow, and last year we completed a 10-year strategic plan. So from 2020 to 2030, we have this wonderful plan to grow, and we brought boarding school survivors and board members and community members and staff together to create this 10-year strategic plan, and then we received funding for it. So that was the major blessing that came with that. And again, the result of people's prayers. And I just, was there for it, right? I was like, I'm ready. Okay, I'll do it. So as part of that, we've been able to grow, and I've been able to hire more staff, which is both a blessing, but it's additional work, right? I'm like growing this organization and the infrastructure, and it's challenging. But one of the things that I do and have always done ever since the first employee that I hired back in 2017, I always ask them that question: how, you will encounter traumatic content if you come work for us. We are, it's in our mission. The word trauma is in our mission, right? Like, you're going to encounter this. And then I ask them, what they do for self-care. And that is, twofold. One, to gauge their awareness, right? Like, somebody's going to be like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Like, I don't need to do that. Like, okay, no, I'm trying to give you the heads up. Right. And that's the other thing too, is like, it's a heads up. It's a way to start the conversation. But so we try to have a trauma-informed, healing-informed organization, and the Native Wellness Institute does a really good training on trauma, being trauma and healing informed. I've gone to that, and I send all my staff to that. It's excellent training if you ever get the chance. And really, other than just creating that environment where other people have permission to take care of themselves, all I can really do is to make sure I take care of myself, right? And if we ever host an event, make sure we've got support for people. But all the things that we do for others, I do for myself, right? So I definitely have my core group of people who support me, and that is crucial. I would not be able to do this work without them. As you know, working in Indian country is very challenging sometimes, and people really like to criticize, and it's hard. It's really hard. And then you got all these aunties and grandmas and everybody telling you how to do it. And
right.
So I've got my core group of support. I always joke, and I'm an open book. I don't, and that's part of why I think I get really sensitive to that whole dynamic in Indian country, is because I grew up an only child. I wear my heart on my sleeve. And I've had people tell me, like, you're going to have to toughen up if you want to work in Indian country. Like, but do I? Can't I just cry and go hide in the corner? And they'll just leave me alone. but basically, I joke about this all the time. I'm like, between my therapist, my executive coach, and my attorney, I support people. Of course, my family and friends and loved ones also. But yes, I try to maintain balance between the really heady work that we do, the researching, the records. We're building a digital archive, talking about these paradigms, structural and institutional racism, and it can be very cerebral.
Mm-hmm.
But I always try to balance that out with things that help me process the emotions. I've taken some trainings and learned about things like bilateral activation, which was cool because I was like, oh, I just kind of instinctively knew that if you're going to have a gathering where people are just talking, and it's all in their head, that at some point you have to move them into that heart space, right? So
right.
Creative things, artistic things help us activate our right brain if we're too dominantly focused on left brain activities, right? So I think that's one of those things that we as Indigenous people culturally instinctively know. That's why our people are always sitting there like beading or doing some kind of arts and crafts in the background of talking, right?
Yeah.
That's actually an act of healing for us to integrate both left and right brain, head and heart, right? So I try to do that. And one of my things that I like to do that's creative, I did beadwork way back in high school. I don't have time or patience for it anymore, but I like to do Zumba.
Oh, hey.
Because I've always loved to dance. So it's like dancing, but it's exercise. And then the hour flies by and I'm like, oh, I just finished my workout and it was nothing but fun.
Oh, that's great. That's a great outlet, though, to have that physical outlet, especially right now where we're kind of cooped up and can't really do much or go places where we normally would go. I was trying to find on Facebook. I seem to remember someone might have recorded you singing.
Oh, no. No. Are you going to pull that up?
I couldn't find it. It's okay. I couldn't find it.
Oh, thank God.
And you're also a wonderful singer.
Oh,
And it was a Whitney Houston song, if I remember right. That's a damn hard song to sing, man.
Yeah.
I don't want to go against you in any karaoke, that's for sure.
I do like karaoke. So when I was a little girl, like 5, I thought I wanted to grow up and be an actress. Now, remember, I said I was an only child. So I used to just like stand in front of the mirror and do a show, like, pretend I was talking to myself or something, like I had to make imaginary friends. Right. So, cause we moved around a lot too. So I was always like the new kid, like, changing schools and having to make new friends. So, I used to also watch that show called Solid Gold.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
And then after the show, we'd shut the TV off and my mom and dad would put on music and then I would dance around like I was a solid gold dancer. So I thought I wanted to be an actress and a solid gold dancer. And then when I was in high school, I actually did go to the arts high school here in Minnesota for both theater and dance. So that's where, I'm not that great of a singer, but I can carry a tune. I was in a
you can belt it out. You can belt it out. I didn't realize we had that in common as well. So, because I'm an only child, we moved around a little bit, and I wanted to be an actor, and was totally into theater in high school, and that's what I wanted to do. But unfortunately, there were things in my behavior that really didn't let me go to school and study that craft very well. So for some reason, I became an attorney. I guess that was the.
I always wanted to be an attorney in junior high. Really? My daughter has already switched. First she wanted to be a teacher, and then she wanted to be a sewist, and then I think right now I can't remember. She keeps changing it, right? So I wanted to be an attorney too.
Yeah, it's not necessarily all it's cracked up to be, but it can be lucrative for some.
Well, and that's the thing is, I think attorneys who are in it for the money, you have to hustle, and that takes on its own life, I think.
Yeah. So tell us what's going on with the Healing Coalition now, or what some future plans, if you can.
Oh yeah, well, I didn't finish the what do I do to take care of myself. So the Zumba is a little bit of that, I think
Wait,
physical category.
wait. Look at Vance's picture.
I'm so glad. Oh, he's gonna be mad. I'm so glad you're listening, Vance.
So handsome.
That's hilarious. You told me I could watch the comments, but I just put it aside so I could just focus.
I'll pop some up every once in a while.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Oh, I love it. Well, that must be why the three of us get along so well, huh?
I think so. Maybe we should start a troop. Maybe 1491s need some new folks. What do you think?
Yeah, right. And with social media these days, we can just do our own thing and put it out there and see if it goes viral.
Yeah, or just see it not do anything.
Or crickets. Yeah.
Yeah, crickets. There we go.
So I also try to have my prayer life, and one of the things that I wish I could be better about, that I try but I'm inconsistent, is like yoga and meditation, right? So I try, but I don't have like a real practice, right? Like I know some people like wake up and they do, I'm like, yeah, if I can remember, I'll squeeze it in. But yeah, I try to do all those things to, balance my mind, body, spirit, and heart. And it's challenging, especially nowadays in our current situation. I've been joking lately, but it's not a joke at all. And it's not even funny, but I feel like we're all not just working at home, but we're living at work. I mean, some days it's really hard to shut it off because it's right here, right? This is my home office. And, some days I wake up out of bed and I come sit right down, it's just harder to find that balance nowadays. And as we prepare to head into colder weather and a long cold season here, at least in Minnesota and for others in the north, it's going to be even more important to find ways to get outside.
Yes.
Even when it's snow. So me and my daughter are going to take up cross country skiing.
Oh, that's great. I love cross country skiing. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing in this area. It's just the snow's not all that great. I miss being up in New York, in upstate New York, and in Syracuse and Buffalo area where there's great snow to cross country ski. The winter and snow is wonderful, and I'm jealous of those who get that, because all you have to do is just bundle up the right way and you can jump in just like it's a swimming pool, man.
Yeah.
Move around, make forts. It's the best thing in the world. And so good for you. That's a really great sport to get into. So what else? And I know you have a daughter too who's going to school, and so she's going to school virtually, and you're also trying to work, and that adds stress for many parents that are going through the same thing right now.
So if we have any parents of school-age children listening, please chime in now, because I want to know you're here to support me. But if you're listening, also let us know if you've ever heard of Scary Mommy. Now, that's like a social media, kind of a blog website. Like their main thing is blogs, but they put out hilarious content. And I have my Facebook set up with like really like important news. It's often very political, but targeted more towards, what's happening in Indian country. And then I have my Instagram, because of the algorithms, I have my Instagram set up where it's nothing but like inspiration and funny things and heart things. And so if Facebook gets too heavy, I can just switch over to Instagram. Well, there's all these hilarious memes from Scary Mommy about parenting and doing the homeschool distance learning thing during this pandemic. And so I know I'm not alone, and that it's extremely challenging right now because we just don't get a break. We don't get a break from our children. We don't get a break from work. We don't get a break from our home that could be, maybe possibly neglected and not as clean as we would like it to be because of everything else that's going on. So, yeah, that's a good source of, inspiration for me to know that I'm not alone in this. Have we had any comments from people?
Well, I think we might be a little stuck. Are you seeing any technical issues on your end of things?
No.
No? Okay, it's just me. Okay, now it's back. Yeah, nothing yet on those parents. Let's
if there are any parents, just tell us your funny stories.
Yes, absolutely. Please.
Hear those. Like here, I have one. So my daughter has not yet interrupted us. I told her that if she does want to make a cameo, she can come in and say hi, but that she has to be a good girl and leave when I gently nudge her. So, the other day, I was doing a live recorded video for our elder care packages, and we actually had like celebrity on the line, and so I'm trying to be like secretive because I don't want Vance to get mad at me and be like, you weren't supposed to tell people. But anyway, so it was like this big deal, and it was being recorded, and I told my daughter, and she had been fine. I said, I have another call to get on, and I just didn't, I didn't pump it up like, and it's a big deal, it's recorded, whatever. I just was like, I have a call, and she knows what that means, and she's gotten used to it. So she comes in and she video bombs, but she's not wearing pants. So I'm trying to get her out of there, and I'm like pressing mute and like going, go away, put some pants on. So I hope they edit that before they. But then I had somebody on the call who's I'm friends with on Facebook, and she was posting, and she was like, "Oh, you gotta love it when our children get in there. They just remind us what's important in life and not to take ourselves too seriously." So.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's another wonderful thing is that we're getting to see into each other's homes and spaces. And so we're getting to know people at a little bit different level, right? Which I think is important. We need that right now. And I'm doing my best because I facilitate a lot of meetings, I do my best to make sure that we check in every time. Make sure everyone's doing okay. And if anyone needs anything, and I really like that you all have this, I'm going to bring it up if I can get back to it, the elder care packages that you all are doing with NABS. Let me find it here.
Yeah, so when the pandemic hit, and there it is, we love you. And this is for our elders, so age 60 and older. And if you went to a boarding school, or if your parent or guardian went to a boarding school, you can go to boardingschoolhealing.org and request a We Love You care package. And this package will include these items that are not only some PPE, some native made cloth masks, and native made hand sanitizer, but also these sage bundles and prayer paddles. Every single thing in there was made or hand picked or hand sewn by Native people across Turtle Island. And so it was really kind of a win-win because, not only were we trying to get these packages out to our elders, knowing, when COVID hit, that they were being isolated in their homes and that they may not have all the things that they need, but we also wanted to send them not only these practical things, but some fun items to brighten their day and really, bring some joy into their day. And then when we started pulling all the things together for the packages, we were buying them all from Native businesses and Native entrepreneurs. And so that was exciting too, to be supporting our people during this, economic downturn as well. And then we worked with Deb Parker out in Tulalip, and she got volunteers from the community to come together and curate the boxes. And just, the overwhelming response from people every time they were informed about this, and they just wanted to help. People wanted to donate things for the boxes, and it's been amazing and beautiful. Another one of those blessings that happens, because this is such amazing heart and spiritual work that we all need in our lives right now. Mm-hmm. But also just the response that we've gotten from some of the elders who've received the first wave of boxes that went out. I myself cried when I got a box, even though I'm not an elder. I got a box.
Oh.
And so these were actually items from my box. So this little bundle, the sage was actually handpicked by some folks out in California and sustainably harvested, because we know that California sage is being endangered right now from overharvesting. And then these cedar, some cedar and prayer paddle. Those types of items were in my box, in addition to, masks and hand sanitizer and some native chocolate, some native coffee, some fry bread, some beautiful, wonderful things. I cried, even though I knew what was in the box,
right.
Was involved in the planning and authorized all the purchases, and I still cried, because it was clear that some real love and prayer went into the box. And I talked about this the other day too, where I don't know why, but I ended up feeling like I didn't deserve it, and then I thought, oh no, I hope if any of our elders get a box and they feel that way, they know that is just that negative self-talk, that that you do deserve it. And the thing is, we didn't have to earn it. It is deserved simply because you are who you are, because you're our elder, and because we honor you and respect you. And I made sure that my mom got one. She's an elder, and her parents went to boarding school, and I really thought about her and other elders that I know when we were envisioning this. Mm-hmm. My mom didn't get to hear "I love you" a lot from her parents. So to be able to hear that we love you, and feel that unconditional love, that's what we were trying to do.
It's really important. So River, I love River. Hi, River. River's helping us with the repatriation conference with our graphics and social media work on our repatriation conference campaign. So she's asking, can we request a care package for an elder who doesn't have internet access?
Yes, you can. So there's a really brief form that you fill out on our website. So you can request it on behalf of this elder.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That is great. My computer is freezing again. Let me see if I can. Are you still on there, Christine?
I'm still here. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm having some technical issues. I think I may know. I want to get into something you were just saying, but I think I may know what's giving me technical issues. Let me bring it up real quick. And let's see if we can. I think this is what's given me problems here. Can you see this?
No.
Is it up yet?
No.
It's not up yet.
You have an internet window open that's maybe running stuff in the background?
Something weird is happening with my computer. Hold on.
No worries. Yeah. So
I've got an old computer.
Here, I'll talk while you do that.
Okay. Yes, talk.
So when everybody, was doing the shelter in place and all the travel came to a screeching halt. Oh my gosh.
It's the Baby Yoda kitten.
Oh, so cute.
I can't really, because there's this
Yeah.
Baby Yoda kitten that was rescued after the wildfire.
So cute. Totally looks like Baby Yoda.
Does anyone think this looks like Baby Yoda?
I do.
Okay. Oh,
Cute.
all right. So sorry. I think the Baby Yoda cat is what's causing my computer to seize up because it's just
like
too
there were
cute.
a lot of ads on that site. But yeah, when we all got, slammed into this, like, oh, you're going to work from home in perpetuity. On all the video calls, I was having video internet problems where like I'd make it through a call maybe for a half hour before my video would start to freeze.
Right.
So then I would shut my camera off, but even streaming other people's video into my computer, that would eventually start to freeze. If we had a call that went an hour and a half, it was guaranteed that I had to shut all the video down and just be on audio. And then it was worse if somebody was like showing something on their screen in live time, again, because it was just more data coming across my internet connection. So I did a couple of things. I increased my bandwidth, but then I also hardwired into my laptop, so I'm not on Wi-Fi anymore. Yeah. So that has been really helpful.
Yeah, that is very important. And a lot of us, are not technically savvy, so we don't know quite what to do when we start having these issues. I want to get back to, you were talking about how you didn't feel like you deserved it. Like you didn't deserve that package. And I think there's something, I think it's something that we connect with. And also I bet every single person who's listening right now can connect with that feeling when something good does happen that you don't deserve it. It's almost like our people, like we have no confidence in our security. We have no confidence that the love that's coming to us is coming from a good place. Because not just us here and now, but our ancestors, the generations that have come before us, have had to live through such struggle and insecurity that it's still affecting our lives today. And to be able to recognize that in yourself, Christine, that you feel that way, because sometimes it's even hard for us to recognize that's how we feel. Instead, we just react sometimes to those feelings in ways that are destructive, and that are destructive in our communities. And I know that the issues that you deal with in the Boarding School Healing Coalition brings up those things and more. There are several organizations out there that are working with communities and historic trauma. And I know you mentioned an organization that your staff all trains through. Is that an organization that deals with those kind of issues in historic trauma? Or
well, yes and no. The Native Wellness Institute does a myriad of trainings. So I wouldn't say that they are like solely focused on healing historic trauma, but that is a piece of what they do, right? It's about Native wellness. So they have several programs, and they actually do a lot of trainings. And we've trained with them, but I wouldn't say that's like the only place we train. We'll take training from anybody. We'll listen once, at least once.
Right.
But Native Wellness is good enough that we've gone back to them a few different times. So I did GONA training with them, the Gathering of Native Americans training. So they offer GONA training. They offer this healing and trauma-informed training. I know they do work with Native youth as well. Yeah, they're a great partner. And I would just, check them out. Native Wellness, I think nativewellness.org.
Okay.
Native Wellness, yeah. But the self-awareness that I have is, I think, really important in the work that I do, but it's also been something that I've developed over my lifetime, that out of necessity, out of my own survival, and need for healing, even prior to making it to being at NABS. I am a deeply emotional person, and I think it's really important for all of us to learn, and I'm trying to teach my children this, to be aware of your emotions and to be able to process them. And I'm trying to teach them different ways to do that, right? Like, I like to journal. That's my favorite way to process. Sometimes people like to talk, right? So instead of journaling, you like to just process verbally out loud. My son, he likes to draw. And my daughter's still young enough where she's trying to figure it out. But, you know, figuring out a way to process your emotions, and then being able to also, once you've processed them, articulate them, right? So not only having your own internal awareness, but then being able to explain them, right? Because one of the things that I've learned through the experiences that I had as a child, which I think have a lot to do with intergenerational trauma in my family, is sometimes my needs weren't being met. And I'm not just talking emotional here. Oh, look, right on cue.
All right. Speak of the youngin'.
Yeah, say hi. Hi.
You want to tell us your name?
Mary.
It's nice
Tell-
to
what's
see
your-
you again.
Shooting star.
Jingguan.
Jingguan.
Very good. Very good. Look, we have, can you see that we have a bunch of people who chat and they write comments? Does anyone want to say hello in our chat room? Sometimes it takes a little while to pop up on the chat room, but someone's going to pop up and say hello, I'm sure. So what are you doing tonight?
Just hanging out while mommy does this, right?
Did you have homework?
Not on the weekend, thankfully. She looks forward to not having that on the weekend.
Lance is saying hi.
What did mommy say we need to do when I'm done with this call? Do you remember?
I need to take a bath.
You got to take a bath. That's always, Sunday evening. That's what you got to do. You got to take a bath. So April's my friend. She says, "Hey, hello," and Lance says hello. Lance says, "Ask for chocolate."
Oh.
That's a good idea. It's
How about
very good.
Go get one of those gummy squares. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna bring one for me too? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. I want one.
You're in a different room in a house, and I can't put a gummy square into your.
Just through the camera. You just stick it into the camera, and it'll come right out, and I'll get it.
No, don't mess with mommy's camera.
I'm kidding. I'm teasing. I'm totally teasing.
She knows me. All right, honey. It was great to see you.
I'll come back with your snack.
With my gummy square.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yes.
So what I was saying when she kind of probably figured I was talking about her was that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like our basic human needs for shelter, food, nurturing, right? And at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is finally like self-actualization. Well, if you don't have your basic needs met for survival, you're not worried about self-actualization. Thank you. These are the gummy squares.
Oh, very cool.
Thank you. Okay, can you shut mommy's door? Thank you. So, so not having some of those basic needs even being met when I was,
Love you, Mama.
I love you too, a child. We have no problem saying I love you in this house. We say it a lot. We're probably over I love you-ers. So anyways, not having some of those needs met really has, and actually some of those things are like on the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences that study that was done about trauma experienced during childhood and how it impacts you as an adult. Really just getting to that place where I not only am able to understand my emotions and my needs and what can be met by me and what's needed from others, but be able to articulate that, right? And be able to say, you know what, right now I just need some time. I need to figure out before I respond, right? Or right now what I need from you is just to listen. I just need you to be there, be a shoulder to cry on, right? Or maybe like your partner or spouse, like right now what I need for you to validate these feelings, right? So I've done a lot of work around that. I think it's really important for us to have that level of self-awareness, to know how to interact with people around us, right?
Yeah. And it's different now that we're doing most of our interaction like this or through face masks. Yeah. It seems to be a much different world, and there's just something in front of us really preventing connection. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm so grateful to have, every Sunday night getting to hang out with someone like you. Tell me more about, I don't know how much we can get into your personal life or how you're dealing with COVID as a single Native woman. I think you're single. You may not be single, but I'm assuming.
Just kidding. I'm teasing you.
Okay. What that's like. There's just no opportunities for interaction, or maybe there are, especially in our Native communities. We're not going to conferences. We're not getting to hang out with the people that we work with and that we care about. And how are you handling it as an individual and as a single mama?
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, I guess it might be. So,
Yeah, no, I don't mind. Like I said, I don't mind. It's funny because you're like, oh, we can talk about personal stuff. And I'm like, I don't mind. But really, I'm seriously like, well, who's going to listen? Are we going to lose some of our listeners?
No, this is the juice they're waiting for.
Oh, well, it's funny, too, because like I said, I really am an open book. And I've learned that for me to be able to share the way I do, like from the heart, I believe in being a transparent leader, like transparency, like, hey, I'm human, I struggle, right? Being able to admit when I'm wrong. I also really believe in authentic leadership, which for me, being authentic means just being me. And this is who I am, okay? You want to ask me personal stuff? Get ready. It's been really hard. I think I alluded to that earlier when I was like, look up Scary Mommy. She's hilarious. There's actually a lot of scary mommies that contribute to the blogs. But, what's interesting about the fact that, I'm a single woman, single mother, is that when I started working at NABS, it was a difficult time for me in my life. I had, my husband and I at the time had already attempted a divorce and had reconciled. And then I got this job and we were going to be moving out to Colorado, but he, being in the military, had some trainings that he had to go do. So he was going to stay behind and sell the house and then move out there. And so I took the kids, out to Colorado by myself to start this organization up, right? I mean, it had already started, but to get it independent. When I came on board, NARF was still our fiscal sponsor. And, within 2 months of being on the job, John Echo Hawk took me to lunch and said, so when are you getting your own office? Okay. So he's the boot. And he basically gave me the talk of like, we've only got so many general operating dollars. You guys need to get yourself financially independent. So there I am living in Denver, essentially as a single mother because my husband was not there. And I'm doing this incredibly important but stressful work. I mean, I'm just going to be real. It was rough, right? Like there was a lot going on, trying to trying to build programs and figure this out and make this transition from NARF to NABS being its own thing. And, eventually the board decided to move us to Minneapolis. And so I came back to the Twin Cities, and and the husband and I were, because we were separated when I was in Colorado, we were going to divorce yet again. Right. So, when I came back, we ended up reconciling again.
Wow, that's a lot of stress back and forth.
I know exactly what this is like. Yeah. You're on again, you're off again.
Yeah.
But baby, I love you. So, just that's all just to say it was rough. We did counseling, we did everything we thought we could. We tried everything, really. I know I really did try. And so this last time we got back together, it was about another 2.5 years before I realized, it's just, I'm doing this for my daughter. Like, I'm just kind of settling and I'm just not happy. And so I ended up going to counseling again, this time by myself, and saying, what is it I want? What do I need? And having conversations with him. And eventually we came to the point again where it was like, okay, I think this is what's best for all of us. And that was a difficult conversation about, is it better for my daughter to stay together in a, perhaps unhappy, unwhole relationship, or to separate and break apart this family, but actually be happier, right? Mm-hmm. And when I talked to this family therapist about this, she kind of reassured me that kids are noticing and kids are watching. My daughter ended up saying some things to me just kind of out of the blue that she indicated to me she was picking up on the fact that our relationship, the marriage relationship, wasn't healthy and it wasn't complete. And she was noticing these things. And that just broke my heart. And so, so we did make the difficult decision, but so my heart goes out to anybody who might be going through that right now, because it is a difficult thing to walk through. But also, one of the things that she said that made it easier on everyone, that is just like this golden nugget that I don't mind sharing. In fact, I'll tell anybody who listens. When I said, well, how do I explain this to my daughter? How do I break this news to her? She said, just tell her that even though mommy and daddy aren't a couple anymore, that you're still a family. And it's that simple. And she was like, she'll understand that. And it all, you can say any other thing that you want to say, but it all comes down to that. And then he and I really took that to heart and decided that was how we were going to operate, that, hey, even though we're not a couple, we're still a family, right? So we're committed to being there for her. We're both still her parents. And we're always going to be connected to each other because we have this child in common. And, that we should continue to treat each other that way with respect, right? Yeah. And it made it easier to tell our parents, anybody, friends, family. That's how we described it. Hey, look, we're not going to be a couple anymore, but we're still a family. And I tell you, that just made all the difference. Wow.
That's really powerful and so special, because I don't think, I think some families don't feel like they have those kind of options, or even know that is an option, right? When people break up, they break up, and they're not supposed to, the family is gone too, but that's not the case. So have you feel like you've been able to successfully manage that? And I mean, how are you feeling about it now? I don't know how long it's been since the divorce.
Well, interestingly enough, he moved out last year, but the paperwork takes a while, to draw up and then file. And so, everything was amicable, which I was extremely grateful for, because I am old enough, and I won't tell the audience how old, although I've stopped dyeing the grays. So
I like it.
I am old enough. I have a 22-year-old son as well. And his father and I were not healed enough and not wise enough to have been able to carry things out that way. So it was actually quite a bitter custody battle that went on for years. We went back and forth into court and in and out of court. It took a toll on my son to see his parents fighting all the time. Like just nasty stuff that, you know, I mean, I tried to take the high road and I would not, like, you know, swear about his father, but I definitely didn't say nice things about his father. I was, you know, it was clear I was angry with his father. But his father actually like said in front of the child, like terrible things about me. And in front of me. So yeah, so, you know, that's unfortunate. It happens. People, you know, you think you want to be with somebody for the rest of your life. You love them with all your heart and soul. And then when things don't work out, it's heartbreaking. And that hurt, that deep, deep hurt turns into anger. And it's really difficult to get a handle on that and keep it separate from the children. And so because I saw what it did to me and I saw what it did to my son, you know, me and my ex-husband decided that we didn't want to do that to each other or to our daughter. So, but yeah, so it got finalized in April in the middle of the pandemic. I was like, wow, this is interesting timing. Like almost like the universe and spirit was like, are you sure? Like, now you're going to be alone and in a pandemic. So he's actually been really supportive. We've worked together. This co-parenting thing, we've always been amicable and supportive of each other. We both had jobs where we would be traveling. So when the pandemic hit, you know, it was an adjustment, but we made it through. You know, I did reach a point where, because of my wonderful self-awareness of my emotions, I had a moment where I was like fed up, and then I was like, oh yeah, you just need to ask for help. And I was like, I need your help with the homeschooling. You are not carrying your weight and I am losing my mind. The homeschooling thing has just been so terrible. Like the education system already wasn't great for our children. And when I say our children, I mean everybody's children, but particularly Native children, right? Like it's failed us in so many ways. And now it's even worse because, you know, they were really, I have a problem with the education system in that right now it trains our children for these standardized tests, right? So my daughter is literally, she's learning to read and write, and she's learning principles about math, but she's also being forced to memorize a lot of things that are geared towards these standardized tests. You know, she's in second grade, next year is third grade when they start these standardized tests. And I'm really, now that I'm homeschooling, I'm actually seeing the daily lessons and I'm really getting angry because I'm like, you know what, I might rather just homeschool her for real since I'm already homeschooling her through this distance learning and just teach her the things that I think she needs to know to be an Indigenous woman in this world. Like, I think that would be better, right? Yeah. They don't teach our children how to learn, which kind of gets at the larger problem of our current society in that we're not really trying to teach people to be self-actualized. We're just training robots, right? And people who follow without questioning. So I think we could do a whole nother Red Hoop talk on that, Shannon.
Yeah, critical thinking skills and questioning, being able to question what they learn. And I think there are probably some good public school districts out there that may be a little bit better, but the public school system is so drawn into that standardized testing crap. It's that's not how our most of our kids learn. You know, we're more visual and tactile and need something more than a sheet of paper with ABCD on it. It's indoctrination, not education. Yes, that's very good. From our traveling Indian, they want good corporate slaves. Oh, it's so painful to think about. I'm honored that you're able to share that kind of story with us. Because I think it's important for all of us to see the healthy options and the healthy choices that we can make in our lives as natives. I feel like oftentimes we don't get the kind of spiritual or psychological help that we need when we struggle, and sometimes we don't have people around us that can show us there's other options and other decision making that we can have to help. I guess keep ourselves healthy and whole and sane. And, we're all sacred. We all make a difference, and it's important for us to take care of one another. And it makes me so upset when I see people in Indian country, the disenrollments and the other activities that, kind of pull us apart instead of bring us together. And I'm grateful for your story, Christine, because you've been going through all of those and have been able to come on the other side with such wisdom and good spirit. So I'm really grateful to be your friend, and happy that you can share all that. I don't know if I could share to the same in-depthitude that you can share. And so I'm very grateful for it. It helps me think about how I can be better. So thank you.
Thank you. I learned early on when I started to seek healing, when I became aware I needed healing.
That's the first thing.
Yes. The first step, right? You have to admit there's a problem. And actually the 12 steps were part of my journey, and there's multiple 12-step programs. So yeah, that's one of the first things that I learned was that my experience, right? My terrible hurt and pain and difficult lessons, all of that can actually help someone else. And that makes it feel like, well, I didn't go through it for nothing.
Right.
If my terrible messed up journey can help someone else get to a better place, then yeah, I'll share it. So yeah, it's been challenging, but similar to what you said, being able to connect with people both on Zoom and in person, since we've had a beautiful summer. I try to do some outdoor meetings with folks, getting out in nature. For my birthday in July, I took the kids and we did a road trip and we went up into the mountains and, just trying to, it's made those connections with people more meaningful, not only in our personal lives, but also in our professional lives. And so part of the reason why we did the elder care packages, the We Love You packages, but because we couldn't meet in person for a conference this year, we are doing a virtual summit. So we'll have a one-day virtual summit on November 18th.
Oh, great. Yes, I will be there. I will be listening and watching.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting because we've never had to do a virtual summit before. But I've attended several online conferences this year, in the last 6 months. And I think we're all learning and you can actually get a lot out of it. We're only going to do the one day though, because it's difficult to commit to sitting at your desk for 8 hours a day, on the video camera day after day.
Yes, it really is. Yeah. Ours is 3 days, but they're shortened days. And then we also are recording them. So people who have registered can go back and watch, if they're unable, if it's just too much in front of the computer. So, we're that's how we're trying to get past those hurdles, because it really is difficult. I'm finding after a week full of Zoom video interactions that it's more tiring than in-person interactions in a way. It's tiring on your eyes. I'm finding that I'm going blind. like my I think I need new prescriptions in my eyeballs. And but anyway, so April says, Is that on NAB? Is it on your website? The virtual summit, is it out there yet?
We have not launched registration yet. I'm so glad you're excited and asking, April. Thank you. So far, all we've done is issue a save the date, but we will be putting registration up very soon. So it's November 18th. Just if you follow us here on Facebook, we'll be sure to post and you'll get the notice. Or if you go to our website, you can sign up for our e-news and we'll send you an email when we have the registration up. Yeah, I appreciate that you're saying you're going to record them and make them available, because I actually was asked to speak at a conference. Well, I was going to go there in person, and it was supposed to happen in April, and then it got shut down, and then they decided to move it to virtual. And it was one of the first virtual conferences I participated in during this pandemic that we're in. And I was so overwhelmed that all I could do was show up for my session. And I didn't get a chance to watch anybody else's session, but then they emailed and said, okay, they will all be available for the next 2 weeks on this platform. And I was so grateful, because then I was able to go back and listen to some of the sessions that I wanted to be in on. So yeah, I think everything is just kind of slowed down, which is a good thing. Things just take a little bit longer. They take more energy from us. And that's okay. I think it's definitely a message that that we all needed. In fact, in March, the first week of March, the last trip I went on, NABS had a board retreat, and I was walking along. We went to Verona in California, and I was walking along the path with Sandy, and I saw what looked like a leaf and a twig, like a stick. It was big. And as we got closer, I looked down at the ground, and it was the biggest snail I have ever seen in my life. The snail, the snail's shell was this big, and his leg or his whole body was like this, like it looked like a stick and a leaf from a distance.
Oh my God.
So of course, the weirdo that I am, I pulled out my phone and was taking pictures of him, some video of like, oh, look at him go. But he's like,
what are they doing out in Verona to have big old snails like that?
They had a few of them along the path, because so then Sandy and I kept walking, and we were like, that was interesting. And then the next morning on the way back for the day's meetings, we saw another one. He was smaller, but we saw another one, and I said, I think it's a sign. And she was like, I thought the same thing last night. So we both went to our rooms and were thinking about this snail, and like, what is this snail relative trying to tell us, and we both felt like it was a message to slow down. And so that became the theme. And we, of course, joked about adding a snail to our logo, but we're I can just see Vance rolling his eyes right now. But so anyways, we joked about it. And so we had this snail medicine at that retreat that was just telling us to slow down. And that was the last trip that I was able to go on, because literally while I was there that week in California was when we heard about some of the first cases up in Washington, and the cruise ship that was trying to dock in California that had people with COVID on it. And and I was out there in San Diego going, oh my God, get me home. And and then that was it. And everything did come to a screeching halt, and we were all on a snail's pace since then.
Yeah, we've had to be. Even though things are coming at 100 miles an hour, it seems like even faster than what they used to be. The kind of care that things require right now is really important. And I hope, with the elections coming up, there's going to be building more and more controversy, more and more conflict, that at least us in Indian country can come together and support one another and support the issues that matter to us, and can find common ground there.
Yeah.
because I know no one else outside Indian country seems to have the ability to do it, but I know that we can, at least on the issues that are important to us, right?
Yeah.
Well,
there's so much at stake, right? And the country's so divided, not only on, the science. Prior, they were divided on the science about, the climate crisis, and then they were divided on the science of the pandemic, and we're divided on all these political issues, and there's a lot of misinformation. There's really, really scary stuff happening with like the QAnon thing, like that.
Oh.
Blows my mind what's happening around that. It's very scary right now. But I also think, back to the snail, right? Like, well, the snail, it's not that the snail can't move. It's just that the snail knows it only has so much energy, right? And so it has to be very, very focused, very concerted. Where am I going? Because I can't be like, oh, I'm going over here and then I change my mind and go over here because it's going to take me too long. I wasted my energy, darn it. Nighttime and I won't get there till tomorrow. But, if we think about ourselves that way, right?
Yeah.
The pandemic has shown us that, or it's shown me for sure, like I only have a certain amount of capacity. I have a bandwidth, just like my internet cable, right? Where I only have so much room for all the stuff, right? And work takes up quite a bit of it. And then my kids and myself. And guess what? No bandwidth left today to clean the kitchen. So, oh, well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to live with it. And I think that's a good paradigm for right now, right? What is crucial? What is critical that we absolutely have to make room for in our bandwidth, and keep focused, right? Because there's a lot of other stuff right now that's being thrown around as distraction. And a lot of people are chasing after all that, extra stuff and losing sight of what's right in front of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Lance, we have a regular watcher, Lance. He says there's a little awakening being felt among Indians. And I think there is. And we're taking opportunity now to really raise our voices in a way I hope that's positive. There was an article that I read this weekend. It came out of the Texas Observer of all places, and it's called the Anti-Indigenous Handbook. And it's not something written by anti-Indian people, but what it is I'll bring it up here real quick. It is a handbook of different case studies that helps to show that anti-Indigenous kind of perspective, and how those individuals and organizations undermine our collective rights. And I think it's important for all of us to really understand some of and there's beautiful artwork, by the way, in this. But there's great stories. There's stories from Australia, from Guam, and also within Indian country. And so it's really good. It's mostly text. Really good, a really good article to spend some time with, to learn more about those voices that are trying to drown ours out. And I think one way that we protect ourselves and that we can speak the truth is to understand what the other side is saying and make sure we're not buying into those voices. And I think if you look at that, again, it's a Texas Observer. I'll put the link in the chat. I think if we can really read that and not buy into some of that language, and know where it's coming from, it'll help us fight back and really use this time right now in a way that lifts us up and that we can lift one another up together. Instead of being divided. Sometimes I get a little, I don't know what your social media for NABS is like, or even your personal posting, because I know you post some political things on the association social media, because we share a lot of different news of things that's happening. And I'm always surprised sometimes with some of the anti-Indian sentiment that comes from Native people. And it's only because, we don't, I don't know what it's from, but I like to think it's because we don't question sometimes why things are the way they are. And we're not aware of our treaties. We're not aware of our histories. And so we just take on, I don't know, we connect with the rednecks, the survivalists, and sometimes their thinking is not in line with really what it means to be Native. And Lord, I don't speak for Indian country, and I don't mean for it to sound like that. But I think there's a place in the center of all of us where our job is to protect our mother Earth, our environment, and one another within it, and our places in it. And I think when you look at it that way, it's fairly simple. And there's a lot of things to distract us, so they become complicated.
It is really complicated, right? Yeah. Just listening to you talk, I was thinking of a few different things, right? Like some of those people's perspectives are economically motivated, and some of them it's a result of that indoctrination and successful separation where they no longer really see themselves as Indian. I met a guy on a plane one time. I told him what I did, and I thought he was Native. I was sitting next to him on the plane, and then he said something that just made it sound like he wasn't Native. And I was like, so then I asked him, and I was like, oh, I thought you were Native. And he was like, oh, and he basically, like, somewhere along the lines, somebody in his family was adopted out and just cut off from like any of his culture and his people and relatives. And so it was just like, oh, that's so sad, right? Like, and that's the result of the boarding school policy.
Yeah.
And then it gets all into these, aspects of like, what are our Indian identity, right? Like there's so much in that, right? With blood quantum versus like, do you speak your language? Do you know your culture? Do you practice your ceremonies? Are you an urban Indian or a res Indian? Like there's so many ways, like you were saying, like we either divide ourselves, or there's these, kind of constructs that make us think we're separate, but we're not. Right. And I think that's the thing that our ancestors knew, was that we're not separate from each other, nor from our environment, right? The animals, the plants, the rocks, the earth, the sky, everything. We are all connected. And it's kind of funny to see like all the people who are culturally appropriating or just being mystified by like Indigenous people. And it's like, great. Yeah. You want to marvel at our culture and our spiritual ways. But you should also know about our political status and the struggles that we have, right? Like they come hand in hand, and it's complicated.
It's complicated. Isn't that a song or something? Well, we have been all over the place tonight, and it's been really great. I want to make sure that you've been able to share whatever we need to talk about with NABS.
Yeah.
Is there anything?
Yeah. Here's my little spiel.
Okay.
It has been fun, Shannon. This was really fun. I would say overall, if people want to know more, definitely head to our website, boardingschoolhealing.org. There's a lot of information there. There's a resource database that you can access for free. All you have to do is set up a login, because we want to be able to track how many people are using these free resources. And there's all kinds of information in there that you can find about the history on boarding schools, the impacts, things that communities are doing for healing. There's the education resources that we have on the website. There's the UN filing you can read about. You can request an elder care package. You can sign up for our e-news, come to our virtual summit in November. You can join the coalition. It's free to be an individual member if you're a tribe or an organization, native or non-native organization. There is a small fee for membership in the coalition, but there are so many ways to get involved. And follow us on social media: YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, although we do exist on LinkedIn, but I don't know, do people really, there's a few people that post on LinkedIn like really consistently.
Yeah.
We have a blog, so sign up for the e-news and follow us on social media to stay posted with our blog. And then in the future, when we can travel again, we really want to, connect with people and do some regional gatherings in addition to our annual conference. Oh yeah, I forgot one thing. As soon as you land on the website, you're going to see a pop-up to take a survey, and it's about child removal in Indian country. So that's something that we're doing as well. So if you are Native and you've experienced boarding school, foster care, or adoption, either yourself or in your family, please take the survey and tell others. No survey like this exists in Indian country. We're doing this in partnership with Sandy Whitehawk and the University of Minnesota, and looking to explore those connections between boarding school, adoption, and foster care, the impacts of removing our children from our homes and communities, as well as what people are doing to heal.
Christine, you are really wonderful, and I love you so much. And I'm so grateful that we got to do this, just as a girl's thing. No,
No offense, Roy.
I love you, Roy, but it was really nice to be able to sit and chat. And thanks for everyone who's joined us in the chat room. Please reach out to the Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition and get some more information. And like always, our 6th annual repatriation conference is coming up October 26, 27, and 28. And like I've told you before, if you want to attend our repatriation conference virtually, but can't afford it, your boss won't pay for it, but you're very much interested in repatriation issues, send us an email. I'm going to put a banner up real quick that send us an email. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Send us an email at general.aaia@indian-affairs.org. Tell us why you want to attend, and I will send you a free link so that you can have a free scholarship to attend the conference. So we got a few from the last time I advertised this. And so I hope I get a few more of you all from the chat room that will join us at the repatriation conference. And we'll be so happy to see you there. Let's see, Christine, is there anything else that we want to share about?
Yeah, I just want to say, as I'm hearing you talk about the repatriation conference, I'm excited. I came to your conference last year, and I just have to say thank you, Shannon. I'm really grateful that we got to meet a couple years ago at NCAI, and that we've been able to develop our friendship and to partner together and support each other in this work. I'm really grateful for the work that you're doing. It's so important to Indian country, and just grateful for your support as a fellow Indigenous woman. We need to support each other. So
Absolutely.
Chi-miigwech. Thank you.
Yakoki. Thank you. Next week, we're going to have another special Red Hoop Talk. And I hope you all will join, because we want you all to be our guests on Red Hoop Talk. So that means we will be sending out those people who tell us they want to join us in the studio a special link so they can and talk to us, and so we actually get to meet you in person. So that's you, JD. That's you, April. That's you, Wabanaki. Lance, I hope to see you. We hope that you all will join us and be our guests next week on Red Hoop Talk. And so Roy will be here, and Roy and I will be pulling you all in and out, and we'll have some chats. We'll answer your questions and just have a nice, fun time. And maybe we'll get into some serious, issues too. So join us on Red Hoop Talk next week. And that's all I got. Thank you for the Association on American Indian Affairs for producing this show. And Christine, have a wonderful evening. Give your daughter a big hug from all of us. And I think it was JD who was giving her an emoji of a piece of chocolate earlier.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Shannon. You all have been wonderful. Thanks for having me on.
All right, everyone. Good night. And we're ending the broadcast. See you later.